floating in the Detroit River, the pride of the Motor City and the capital of automotive manufacturer. But today, clear the streets and jump back. The FedEx Series is ready to run. Juan Montoya. The descriptions are endless. Aggressive, daring, dominating, fast. Awesome car control. Montoya came off of his big Indy 500 win to dominate Milwaukee for his first kart win of 2000 and Toyota's first win ever. Only one victory this season, but he's led 49% of the laps in kart. Montoya likes Detroit, sitting on the pole here last year and leading the first 58 laps. Today, Juan tries to be the first two-time winner of the season.
As the engines roar to life, the legend of Juan, the wonder kind, continues to grow. Evidence yesterday in qualifying. After Dario Franchitti had established a new track record, the final seconds, the final minute, this young man cranked out a lap that was identical to a thousandth of a second the time posted by Franchitti. So what do? You go to the second fastest lap, and by 400ths of a second, Montoya earns the pole position. But he's going to have Dario Franchitti right along, side by side, as we start this race at Belle Isle.
Montoya's rival last year, Dario Franchitti, has struggled in 2000. In 6 races, only one podium, a second in Japan. Now back to a temporary street circuit where Franchitti rules, winning 5 times in the last 2 years. The Scotsman is the defending champion of this event, and he hopes to make it 2 in a row on Belle Isle.
And for Dario Franchitti, we talked about the fact that he lost that tiebreaker yesterday for the pole position to Juan Montoya. But it's the second time that's happened with Juan. And of course, just look back to the race. The last race of 1999, he loses a tiebreaker for the driving championship. So I asked Dario, well, you got off to a slow start. What about the championship for 2000? He said, well, I'm only 31 points behind as they take to the track behind me. He says, 31 points on a racetrack like this, I can make that up in a hurry.
The street courses of kart are literally canyons of concrete with the walls inches away. A very intense race where one lapse in concentration will end your day. The FedEx Series is ready to take to the streets for the second time this season, and they're still searching for their first repeat winner. Hi, I'm Paul Page with Parker Johnstone, and this race is always a very tactical race, full of strategy that teams and drivers have to work close together. But at 197 miles, well, that's a very interesting distance.
Well, most people agree it'll be a 3-stop race, 2 full stops and a splash and go. The strategy comes in, do you split the drivers if there's an early yellow, trying to gain track position at the far end looking for the checkered flag?
And to add to it all, there's the possibility of rain. That's good, though. We can race in the rain here.
Well, the rain would make for even better racing here at Belle Isle, and look for some new names in the top 10, even the top 5 if the track's wet.
We're about to see how this game will be played. Four Champ cars have answered the call to start engines, and we're ready to go with the Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix of Detroit from the Raceway on Belle Isle, part of the Kart FedEx Championship Series. There has been news off the track this week, too. Andrew Craig, the CEO and president of Kart, resigned, and Bobby Rahal has been appointed as the interim president and CEO of Kart. We'll have more on that later. Right now, he cares about what his 2 race cars are doing. So here is the starting grid, brought to you by Monroe Reflex. As we take a look at that front row of Juan Montoya and Dario Franchitti with identical times. In row 2, the Penske teammates, Helio Castroneves and Gil de Ferran. Now, Helio looks to end his string of bad luck with a solid run through the streets. In row 3, Max Pappas. Outside is Cristiano D'Amata, who last year crashed heavily during his rookie campaign. Now he looks to avoid the sophomore jinx. In row 4, Kenny Breck and Christian Fittipaldi. Last year at Detroit, Patrick Carpentier finished underneath of Mauricio Guzman. Today, he hopes to be first under the checkered flag. He starts alongside of Roberto Moreno. But gearbox problems that prevented Moreno from winning on the streets of Long Beach. Could today be his first win? 6th row, Michael Andretti and rookie Oriol Servia. Back in the 7th row, Adrian Fernandez and Alex Tagliani. The 8th row, Mark Blundell and Michel Jourdain Jr. In the 9th row, Jimmy Vasser and Mauricio Guzman. And yes, in the 10th row, Paul Tracy and Norberto Fontana. The 1994 champion here, Paul Tracy, won the only street race so far this year at Long Beach. 11th row, Tarso Marquez and Shinji Nakano. And in the 12th row, Takuya Kurosawa and Luis Garcia Jr. Tony Kanaan is not starting. He was injured during qualifying, will be out several weeks. So we're ready to go with the Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix at Detroit from Belle Isle, the Raceway on Belle Isle. The warm-up laps continue on the Raceway at Belle Isle as we prepare for the start for the Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix of Detroit. We mentioned the distance at 197 miles or 84 laps, going to make for an interesting day.
Lots of surface changes. It's very bumpy here, physically very demanding on the drivers.
Got plenty of onboards for you. Norberto Fontana, he'll start back in 20th position. A little further forward, here is Mauricio Guzman.
I'll be riding along with Mark Blundell, of course.
And up at the front, there is Juan Montoya. Now, we mentioned Tony Kanaan not being in this field. Gary, can you give us the further update?
Kind of strange down here in pit road to have the luxury of this wide open space down here. This is the pit area where Kanaan and the Mo Nunn Racing team was scheduled to be. Tony remains in a hospital here in Detroit. He had a compound fracture of the left arm, has had surgery. Dr. Olby says that he could be released as soon as tomorrow. He also has a couple of broken ribs. He has a minor concussion as well. Bottom line, he's going to be out of action for 6 to 8 weeks. Thus far, Morris Nunn has not yet named a driver, but he plans to be in competition next week, a week from today, at Portland International Raceway. Jan?
And Gary, there's certainly nerves for the drivers out on the racetrack, but also for the crews, because Parker told us they're not sure if it's a 2 or a 3-stop race. There's nervousness here. Also, if you can't pass on the track, you got to do it on pit road. A lot of tension down here for these crews.
And in fact, passing on the track is the tough part. Really only one solid place.
Going down into turn 3 where they're at 185 miles an hour, they're hard on the brakes. It is the primary passing location, but watch for these two drivers, Montoya and Franchitti at the beginning. We've now renamed one Juan Montoyota after his victory last race at Milwaukee. That should be very interesting. The two Penske's, Castroneves and DeFerrin, they've been hooked up ever since their test last week in Mid-Ohio. They've been dominant on street and road courses in testing and up into practice, just short of qualifying. They too should be very quick. And of course, we're going to keep our eye on Paul Tracy back in 20th place. 19th place, remember it was at Long Beach. He came from 17th to win.
A lot of volatility, though, in the front row, several rows for that matter, but Montoya and Franchitti with identical times and passing being so critical. Let's see how they start the run here. They pick up the speed. Montoya just a little bit ahead as they come to the line. Green flag is out. Here we go. Montoya jumps the lead.
We saw Dario lock up the brakes there on the entry into turn 1. Remember, Dario last year was very good coming off of turn 2 down into turn 3.
Elio Castroneves jumped into 3rd place, followed by Jill DeFerrin. Max Pappas tries to make a move on Christian Fittipaldi. Then Kenny Breck comes inside his teammate Pappas.
And we see Marino and Michael trying to bang wheels there coming off the 3rd corner. And Servia
gets into it a little with Carpentier. I guess that sets the tone. Everybody knows they have to get past wherever they can, and in many ways, however they can.
For a lot of these drivers, when the tires are cold, the pressures aren't up, the starts and the restarts are their primary opportunity to make a pass. We see Tracy moving up now because they know once everyone gets heat in the tires, the rhythm will be established and it'll become more difficult to pass. And here comes Vasser following Tracy.
Well, Tracy, without question, is going to be the guy to watch as he charges up through this field. His qualifying position was a result of a very early off in the final round of qualifying that kept him from running the laps he had hoped to, though his Friday qualifying wasn't all that good. He had only qualified 16th, and in Saturday qualifying, he'd moved up to 11th. Now here comes Vasser as he moves on Tracy.
And Tracy had gone from 19th spot, 20th originally, with the removal of Kanaan to 19th place up to 14th. Now back to 15th with Jimmy getting back by him.
Good start. Just work one at a time here.
Barry Green talking with his driver, Paul Tracy.
Actually, I think that was his engineer, Tony Sicali, talking to him there, Paul.
Nevertheless, it was with Tracy.
yeah, absolutely.
Back to the front. Very anxious Franchitti. Castroneves right there too.
You can see how this lead 3 group of cars has pulled away. Paul, when you and I were down in the Fountain Complex the other day, it was pretty obvious from everyone standing there, Castroneves was absolutely hooked up. This section of the track where it goes from cement to asphalt to cement to asphalt to cement back to asphalt, his car looked like it was on railroad tracks where everybody else was just hanging on there. I would think that he's probably using his tires less than Montoya or Franchitti.
And look how the front 3 have now pulled away. Montoya, Franchitti, Castroneves. Then a bit of an interval back to Gil DeFerrin.
We talked about fuel strategy. The guys in the front are obviously pushing very hard. Montoya and Franchitti both get exceptional fuel mileage while driving right at the limit. Farther back, we know that Fernandez, some of the other drivers, if there's a yellow early, they'll be in, trying to go off sequence to try to gain track position towards the final stages of the race.
Cristiano D'Amata now beginning to work on Gil DeFerrin back in 4th place. You see them, they just came off the corner behind the top 3 here. D'Amata had that just horrific crash last year, and they since last year have moved the section of barrier, the opening that he crashed into. And as you can well imagine, when he came here, he expressed some concern. He wondered exactly where that would be because it totally destroyed the race car.
Well, it looked like a super speedway crash. And I talked to him immediately after that incident. He said, it wasn't that big of a deal. And then I talked to him later in the week when he had a chance to see it on television. And he had
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a huge wreck. He had no idea.
Christian Fittipaldi moving in behind D'Amata, and Max Pappas beginning now to catch up to Christian Fittipaldi. Front 3 are still running like they're on a string. Go back to the front of the field and go on board with Juan Montoya, who has clear sailing for the moment.
Look how hard Franchitti's pushing there. You can see him lock up the rear brakes. Right now, Montoya, the only driver in the 1-minute 17-second bracket. Everyone else in the 1:18s down to 6th place, then 1:19s and 1-minute 20-second range. It's a blind downhill corner with a big drainage ditch right here. Transitions from concrete to asphalt. 180 miles an hour down this back section. They brake on the diagonal, blind all the way around the sweeping right-hander, then downhill. They have to stand on the brakes, 2nd gear. Now watch, concrete, asphalt, back to concrete, very bumpy here, asphalt, concrete, asphalt, back to the concrete. Makes it very difficult to balance the car there.
We're alongside the Detroit River. Get a glimpse of Canada. Windsor, Canada is just off to the left. Now he turns back, and this sends him actually north and heads for the final turn and sweeps across the line. Back into the first turn for Montoya. The leader by a bare 9/10 of a second. Castroneves has dropped back just a bit. Here comes DeFerrin, D'Amata, Christian Fittipaldi, followed by Max Pappas and Max's teammate Kenny Breck, with Roberto Moreno beginning to work on Breck. A lot of conversation in the paddock about an hour ago. What if we get rain here today? And a lot of teams said if we get rain, definitely look out for Moreno.
And some people think that with rain on the horizon, it's just a matter of selecting between the rain tires or the racing slicks, but it's much more involved than that.
On the fuel, slot 5.
Jim McGee talking to Roberto Moreno.
What he's telling him there is to back off on the fuel position to try to conserve fuel. They have a rotary dial that they can dial back how much fuel the engine is consuming, how much horsepower it's making.
So already some of that strategy beginning to play, eh, Gary?
Yeah, in fact, we're hearing that as a common theme up and down pit road. Now that they've settled in, fuel conservation seems to be one of the key words. we've talked to several crew chiefs, and almost everyone's in agreement. If you don't get yellow, if this race runs under green, it's very close on the current fuel mileage to make this a two-stop race. This race is longer by several laps than it's been in years past, and so now it makes it very interesting, as Jan was alluding to, and as Parker mentioned, you get an early yellow, then you may see guys go off cycle. But right now, fuel conservation seems to be the prevailing theme. Jan?
Yes, Gary, and what they're shooting for is about 1.9 or 2 miles per gallon so that they can fit into a two-stop window. But some of the drivers are saying that they just don't like to race that way, where they have to get and turn the fuel back and try and save as much as possible. One of the suggestions that some of the drivers are mentioning is maybe we should take these adjustments out of the cockpit. If we did that, you'd have to make your choice prior to the race. That would increase the strategy, at least for the crews, and the guy could just stand out the whole way with whatever he had.
11th place, there is Oriol Servia with Patrick Carpentier and Adrian Fernandez closing on him. Should it rain here today, Servia, who has only limited test time in a Champ car anyway, despite being last year's Indy Lights champion, has never raced in the rain in one of these. In fact, they didn't get it done in a Lights car. The last time he was able to race in the rain was several years ago when he was racing in Europe. So he was a little apprehensive about what it might be like to run on a heavy car in the rain here in the Raceway at Belle Isle. Now, this is the 5th race that Juan Montoya has led this year. In all 5 races, he has led the opening lap. Back at the Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix of Detroit, no change in the top 10 since we've left you, but this is a change. Mauricio Guzman in trouble. Jan Vikas?
Yes, he's come onto pit road, and as he arrived on pit road, he said on the radio, it feels like it's on 7 cylinders. They've looked over the engine and not seen anything obvious.
You're going to replace both of Gary, right?
When he says replace both of them, that's the electrical boxes that they've taken the side pods off to see if they can get power back to this Mercedes power plant for Mauricio Guzman.
On the race course,
It's about 15 minutes to do that anyway.
That was Mauricio himself. Montoya is pulled out now 2 seconds away from Franchitti. Castroneves still sits in 3rd, followed by DeFerrin and Cristiano Damata. You were talking, Parker, about the possibility of rain.
Well, and it's just not a matter of putting on rain tires or deciding if to stay on slicks. You can see how bumpy it is here, but the cars are very stiffly sprung, very stiffly dampened to try to keep the undertray, the underwing of the car, producing as much downforce as possible. If it rains, these cars would just take off like they've hit glare ice. So it's a matter of suspension adjustments, which they've had to determine beforehand, and obviously everyone's gone for a dry setup. But even on rain tires, it would be very difficult to negotiate this slick concrete surface with these stiff chassis around Belle Isle.
All of the fastest laps thus far have been run by the top 3 front runners, with Montoya having the fastest 3 laps, but he's running about 110 miles an hour, and that's not running in traffic. Since he qualified substantially better than that at 115, right there shows you all of the economizing that's being done right off.
Well, plus they've got over 200 pounds more fuel than they ran in qualifying, running full 35 gallons worth. Plus, you've got to remember these tires have already done their optimum laps during qualifying, and in particular, Montoya had a number of goes on his tires, whereas Franchitti was a little better off with his tire wear during qualifying. So certainly they won't be near the pace that they were during qualifying.
Gary Gerald.
Just a quick update relating to the fuel conservation mode. We said that's a prevailing theme, but we've also heard a couple of indications to Dario Franchitti in particular. Use the button. That's the overtake button where you run full rich, but in only one designated area. They say turn 3, which is the best passing opportunity, end of the front straightaway. We've also heard from Roberto Moreno. He's been told use the button anytime you need to. So they're gambling a little bit, hoping that that little extra squirt of fuel, the extra horsepower, may enable them in the right situation to gain a very precious position.
And what a driver's looking for is for the driver in front of them. Wow.
Just go to opposite block. No problem. I can handle it.
But they're waiting for the driver in front of them to make a significant enough mistake where they can hit the overtake button. It goes to full advance on the timing, full rich on the fuel to try to get by at the end of the long straight going down into turn 3.
Kenny Breck into the pits. This is early as well. This is on the 10th lap, Jan.
Yes, and they were going to make a routine stop, but now the cart officials are pointing to the left rear of the car and say, you guys are done. So I have a feeling that means that he must have brushed the wall. I'm taking a look underneath. Yes, they have a bent lower A-arm Kenny Breck is done for today.
You see Michael Andretti coming from an odd position. He had a quick spin and is now coming back up to speed. Doesn't look like he touched anything. We'll go back and take a look at what happened to Michael Andretti.
Yahoo! As he started to pick the power up, the back of the car just started to rotate. Fortunately caught it.
This is Cristiano D'Amata.
Oh, that's more than a white wall. He actually climbed up on the base of the Street City curb there, coming off the corner.
And that's when I would think you're really going to have to look the car over to make sure it didn't do any damage, though Cristiano is staying out.
Well, a driver holds his breath for just a moment or two through the next couple of corners, and if it feels okay, you've just got to go, hoping that you haven't broken anything that will come loose under load in the next corner.
And despite the crash with the wall, he did not give up his 5th place in the standings. Montoya still the leader. Now almost 3 seconds for Montoya. For Cristiano, he really didn't have enough of an error to allow Fittipaldi to close in that much. Here comes Fittipaldi. Though you can bet when Fittipaldi saw that, he had to lift for just a second or two. Battle here for 2nd place. Dario Franchitti, Helio Castroneves. Juan Montoya has led 493 of the 1,002 total laps this season. With all of that, he has a single victory.
Well, besides fuel conservation, the other concern for the teams and the drivers was tire wear. The tires that Firestone brought this week are the same construction and compound they had at Long Beach. They're a little harder than the tire they ran last year in Detroit. Still, the concern is, can we keep the rear tires alive? With over 900 horsepower, it's very easy to spin the rear tires. You're leaning on the car a lot here at Belle Isle. There are a lot of high-speed corners. The cars are set up to transition very quickly, to turn quickly into the corners. They're meant to put the power down well coming off the low speed. The cars are relatively soft, which means it doesn't have a lot of support in the high-speed corners. Therefore, it puts a lot of wear on those rear tires, and as these laps progress, I suspect we'll see more drivers with the back end hung out.
Kenny Breck, an early out. Jan, what happened?
Well, let's find out. We saw some damage on the left rear. What happened?
Got wide of turn 10 and tapped the wall a little bit with the rear left wheel.
Now, for you, I believe that's the 2nd or 3rd contact you've had here at Detroit. What seems to be throwing you off?
No, it's nothing more than experience, I guess.
All right, sorry you're out.
Thank you.
Kenny Breck thus far this year has had 3 DNFs. Mauricio Guzman, whatever it was, it appears they got it fixed and got him back out. But, of course, the time in the pits on this course cost him dearly. He runs in last place of the cars on the track. Breck, of course, will be scored for last. Right back to the front of the field. Guzman slowed down again.
Yeah, you could see him pull off line there. We're not sure if he had traffic directly behind him that he was just letting through. Since he's now a few laps by, he's a consummate professional. He's not going to get in the way of anybody else's race. We'll see what the problem is here.
You saw the interval from Montoya to Franchitti. The clock says it's 3.38 seconds. But Franchitti now has to seriously worry, I would suspect, about Helio Castroneves. Castroneves' teammate, Gil DeFerrin, scored the 100th win for the Penske Racing team at Nazareth. And as competitive as he is, you know that Helio wants to notch a win on behalf of Roger Penske as well, and he wants to do it soon. Speeds on the last lap. Montoya is still the quickest, and all the fast times are coming at the front of the field. But that does make some sense because they're running almost totally in the clear.
The only thing that's difficult to determine now is what fuel strategies they're running on. We do know that Montoya and Franchitti can drive very quick laps with very good fuel conservation. You know, we're starting to see a line on Franchitti's right front tire, Paul. See if we get a better shot of that. It's the first time I've seen it now. No one's spoken about front tire wear. We have seen him lock up the tires a few times. I'm just wondering if he's got a flat spot or he's starting to blister it. We can't see it on that camera angle. It must be okay.
Montoya continues his rather incredible style of just throwing the car anywhere he pleases. It's almost as if he's never driving it with any traction at all. He's much more comfortable with it sliding maybe he just figures if it's already sliding, I can correct it anytime I want.
And the thing to consider is that for 7 races now, these guys have been surrounded by concrete, either on the short ovals, the 1.5 mile ovals, Long Beach, and sure, there are a few places where you can run off under braking, but otherwise, these guys are hanging the cars right out to the walls. It's not until next week at Portland that there's actually grass where you can hang a wheel off a curb and not jeopardize. Oh, no.
Cristiano D'Amata, smoke at the back end of the car.
10-4. 10-4. Good job, buddy. Good job.
Maybe that brush with the wall jammed the half shaft over to the gearbox and did some damage.
Well, that looks like it just could be something completely unrelated that just let go there. He was running a great race in 5th position. He had a big smile on his face this morning when we talked to him. Thought that he could have gotten his first podium today here at Belle Isle. I'm sure he's extremely disappointed.
Cristiano D'Amata almost always comes to Parker for a little advice before the race, and Parker's advice today was patience, patience, patience. So there are your top 5. They remain unchanged, with the exception of Chris Fittipaldi coming forward. Sly Stallone, they're working on that movie Champs this weekend, and we got to see him here in the driver's suit. A look down on the leader of the race, Juan Montoya, who has led every one of the 17 laps. The view from our Honda Helicam up above Belle Isle in the Detroit River. We are at the 17th lap of the Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix of Detroit. Montoya started on the pole despite having an equal time with Dario Franchitti. He had a faster backup lap to that, so he got the pole. Dario started on the outside of the front row, and Franchitti fell in behind Montoya on the start, and with the exception of the loss of Cristiano D'Amata, there has been no change in the top 5. But Cristiano D'Amata is his story. He pulled off the course a few moments ago, Jan.
Yes, and I checked with his team owner, Cal Wells, and he confirmed that, in fact, it was an engine that let go for Cristiano D'Amata. I then went down and checked on Michael Andretti because we've seen him loose. We've seen that half spin. Checked with Peter Gibbons, his engineer, and said, why has it gone loose? They're not sure. The next pit stop, they will lower the tire pressure. Gary?
Sean Smith is one of the fuel vent guys for the Penske team, and if you look closely inside their helmet, you'll now see the addition of these 2 little LEDs right here. They're trying a new device this week. When an engineer from the telemetry knows that they've got the amount of fuel they want in the car, they hit a button. These flash red, and they disconnect and step back from the car. They're trying to eliminate the possibility of any mistakes in terms of how much fuel they get, and of course it could be an added safety factor as well. A new wrinkle being tried for the first time under race conditions by the Penske team for drivers DeFerrin and Castroneves.
For some reason in the past 2 years, the pit safety has become subject of much discussion. Patrick Carpentier with Adrian Fernandez working on him, and Carpentier trying to close on Oriol Servia. There's all 3 of them, Servia, Carpentier, Fernandez.
That's a battle for 8th, 9th, and 10th position.
Carpentier had quite a week. He got to race a Canadian Air Force CF-18 Hornet. And you know what? Till the Hornet went airborne, he won.
Well, actually, he was ahead of him for a while the Hornet was airborne, but finally the afterburners got the best of Patrick, and Hornet went vertical, and that's something that Patrick just wasn't willing to do.
And, of course, none of the rest of us are jealous that he also got to fly the Hornet. Back to the front of the field, Montoya, 3.5 seconds now ahead of second place Franchitti. Let's just ride with Ron. Over on the run alongside the Detroit River, Montoya, and the right-hand turn that brings him back to a sweeping start-finish line.
You can see the marbles starting to build now offline. We didn't see that at Long Beach. The Firestone engineers were hoping that the same thing would happen here, but you can see offline the dark pebbles forming on the outside of the track. It's going to make passing very difficult on the restarts.
Jan Beekes.
And Parker, that is interesting because it is the exact tire that they ran at Long Beach. So the only difference would be the abrasiveness of the surface. The downforce level is higher on the cars here, but it's amazing how you have a different racetrack, exact same tire. One has a little bit of marbles, the other has none.
Al Spire and the Firestone crew, they have an idea of how to reduce the marbles even more in the future, and it's a simple solution. Take one set of tires away from everybody every weekend. We'll see how that plays. So Cristiano D'Amata out. The first report was an engine problem, and maybe Jan Bikas can find more out right now.
Well, let's find out, Paul. We saw you climb up on the curb and hit the wall a little bit a few laps prior to that. Did that relate at all to the engine?
No, the car was running normal. What happened was the engine. After that, the car was still running normal. I did my fastest lap after that thing. It was just some problem. We still don't know what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's a good question then. In not knowing, Norberto Fontana, routine stop, he makes it on the 23rd lap. So if the engine just had a problem.
The engine is so fast and it's making like like no fuel.
Remember,
They may have another problem.
John Della Penna and Norberto Fontana, that is, of course, the same engine that's carried in this car, the leader, Juan Montoya.
But Toyota has made such great gains this year, not only in drivability, which is why we're seeing them do so well on street courses, but also on reliability. They've taken a page from Honda. They've worked on the transient dyno nonstop. They knew that they were producing good top-end power, but they knew that they had to be reliable, that they had to have good power all the way through the RPM range. So I'm hoping it's just an isolated incident in Cristiano D'Amata's case, so it won't affect Juan Montoya. But we're now expecting pit stops, Paul, amongst the leaders in the next 2 to 3 laps. We've heard that the Patrick guys, if they're playing out their strategy, will go a little farther, that everyone will have to show their hand now to see if they're going to make it in 2 stops or 3 stops over the next couple of laps.
And, of course, part of that ability to stay out longer is based on the engine that you have. The leader, of course, is a Toyota Montoya, and then there are 3 Hondas in a row. And Franchitti, DeFerrin, and Helio Castroneves in third. And then the Fords of Christian Fittipaldi and Max Pappas.
And when you look at the engine, we always talk about power, drivability, reliability. It's also fuel mileage and packaging. They have to be light. The center of gravity has to be low so that the chassis designers can maximize their designs. And the auxiliary equipment has to be small and tidy. So if you have an engine that produces a lot of heat, requires bigger radiators, whoa, you see them lock up the inside right front tire. They're pushing very hard. So if an engine can succeed at all those different disciplines, then you've got an engine that can lead a championship auto racing race.
Last time by, the Newman Haas team gave Christian Fittipaldi a pit in 2 board. That'll put him in on lap 26.
And that would put him just over 1.7 miles per gallon. If the Patrick guys can go to 29 or 30, that's over 2 miles per gallon, just below 2.1. So that's a significant difference percentage-wise in fuel economy.
Remember inching forward at Long Beach and finally leading the race, Takuya Kurosawa? Well, he's come a little bit forward as well. Kurosawa is now running 19th. He started 23rd. New livery for Kurosawa's car with the orange and white. Carso Marquez working him pretty hard. Upper left-hand corner, those are the guys on the move. Tracy and Kurosawa making the biggest jump. So Tracy's kind of settled down in 13th position right now.
But we can see Carso working the back of Takuya, and the problem is you can't get very far offline, otherwise those marbles will adhere to the top of the tires, which are running about 180, 200 degrees in skin temperature. And all of a sudden you're running on other people's rubber and the handling goes off. It can take 2, 3 or more laps to actually burn that back off, making it very, very difficult for the driver to take a chance to try to make a pass.
And you saw there as Montoya completed his 25th lap, he, in doing that, is also closing on those slower cars. Dario Franchitti peels off and heads for his pit stop. Gary Gerald.
We were wondering if Montoya would wait and take another lap. Now Montoya's crew is out as well. We may see the leaders in tandem. They're in adjacent pits. You've talked about how tough it is to pass. Here's where you can make up spots. Franchitti is in. Montoya has gone another lap. Waiting for the fueling. This has taken a little bit longer than they may have hoped. About 13 and a fraction seconds on my clock. We'll see Montoya on the next lap.
Franchitti back up to speed. Many of the teams now laid out, certainly that of Jimmy Vasser. Montoya's crew is over the wall and waiting. Paul Tracy's crew is now beginning to come over the wall. So are both of the Penske cars anticipating a stop.
Gives you an idea of how hard they're using the brakes, or you can see when he pulled the wheel off, the brake dust just pouring out of the bottom of the wheel.
Jimmy Vasser is in from 13th. Jan Beekes.
Yes, for the Penske team, we're going to see Helio Castro-Neves and also Gilles de Ferran coming in here shortly. Gilles de Ferran has no clutch. So when he gets in here, he may have difficulty leaving.
Do you want any changes, any wing or anything?
They're getting ready for a push.
And here comes Montoya,
nice
Gary.
Straight in, right there. Slow down, slow down.
To Chip Ganassi trying to get him to slow down. He hits that spot. Now let's see how much brake dust comes out here. You can see considerable amount, nothing exceptional.
On the fuel. Ready?
Boy, the revs are really up.
You're clear.
12 and a half second stop for Montoya.
Jan Beekes.
Helio Castro-Neves, his service is complete. Well, if your clutch doesn't work, I'd have to say that was a pretty good one for Gilles de Ferran. Guess there's nothing wrong at all with that clutch.
We could hear the burnout from de Ferran in the background there, and I was about to say, how do you do that if your clutch isn't working?
So de Ferran, there he is, comes up to speed just ahead of Christian Fittipaldi. Max Pappas behind Fittipaldi. And Paul Tracy's finally going to make it in. He's coming in from 11th place.
We're watching from a pit away as they service Paul Tracy's car. You can see significant turning there on the left front of the wing. Couldn't get a good look at the right front. Tracy exits and gets back on course.
Now Montoya, Tracy, and the Penske team. Oh, Garcia Jr. has pulled off the edge of the course. And it's right behind the same parking place that Cristiano D'Amata has pulled off the course. I was about to say that Montoya is the last pit out and literally only a few feet from the race course, so he can hammer it going out of the pits. But then too, so can the Cool Team Green cars and to some degree the Penske cars. But it is interesting. One quick spin by
Shinji Nakano there.
Oh, be careful coming around.
Stand on it. Oh, not quite like that.
Well, did he get away with it, or is it bent?
No, he bent that.
It's bent.
He got the right rear end plate there, and then he stalled it.
Well, it was spectacular, though. Looked good for a second. So Shinji Nakano, that's a problem. It's going to no doubt take him out of competition. Look at it once more, Parker, here. Maybe figure out how he got into trouble.
You can see he just carried a lot of speed in there, got the car rotated on the entry. And if he would have picked up the throttle, which is what you normally would have done, it would just carried him into the outside wall. So he did the best thing. He just got the clutch in, kept it running. He was just looking for an opportunity to snap it around. He just went a little too far here before he did it.
Good little dodge by Adrian Fernandez, who was staring right at the side of the car and was able to dart left and get around him. Montoya, of course, continues the lead. The pit stop worked well for him. Helio Castro-Neves was able to get out into second place behind Franchitti. Or second place ahead of Franchitti, I should say. There's Castro-Neves, and there comes Franchitti.
And I think the person we really want to keep our eye on now, Paul, is Paul Tracy. He was really one of the only drivers to make a significant change to his car. We saw him put in just a ton of front wing. He had come in 12th, and I would think now with this car working much better that he should be able to move forward, because we saw that Montoya, some of the other drivers, made no aerodynamic changes, which means they're pretty happy with the car. They may have made tire pressure changes, but that's about it. So watch for Paul Tracy to continue his march forward.
And Gary Gerald, story on Michael Andretti.
Well, he's going to be summoned to the pits if he hasn't already. He had a major pit speed violation. Remember, the speed limit is 50 miles per hour. Apparently, he inadvertently disengaged the pit limiter. Somehow, he was clocked at 63 miles per hour. He's going to be back on pit road shortly.
Well, that's a ticket.
Well, and the problem is, if you disengage the button, you're hard on the throttle. By the time it disengages, you push the button in or lift off the throttle to get it to slow down. The car easily jumps 13 miles an hour. It's something that you've got to be very careful, and you've got to remember, you've got push-to-talk radio button, you've got the overtake button, you've got the pit speed control button, and if you grab the wrong one accidentally, that's all it takes, and you're in and out and way back in the order.
Remember the old game, button, who's got the button? He had the wrong one.
And we could see the lights on the safety truck there.
Here comes Adrian Fernandez, who by not pitting has moved up to fourth. But remember, this is a strategy for this team.
Well, you're hearing the John Ward on the radio.
That's your fuel.
And when they say reset the fuel, you reach up to the dash and you press a button so that you can tell exactly how much fuel is on board.
Clear, go. Doing a good job, Adrian. Doing a good job.
11.9 seconds, and their fuel strategy certainly seems to be working, but it all depends if they catch a yellow.
Back at the Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix of Detroit, that's Adrian Fernandez, and because of that position on the course, on the 32nd lap, we go to full course caution, but everybody had made their first pit stop. This started right here, Parker Johnstone.
You can see he pulled his tear off here, and it went back down inside the engine cowl and apparently jammed up back there. You can see it just as he left on the throttle linkage. Now, we've talked about how difficult this place is physically. It's also very tough mentally. He was talking to his engineers, communicating what the problem was. He got distracted and made an error coming off the corner on cold tires.
Jan Beekes, you were right there.
Yes, I was, and in fact, the Ford engineers just watched the replay, watched very carefully that tear-off, and saw it get sucked into the turbocharger. So they know that there was certainly some serious damage done, and that's just one of those unbelievably unlucky breaks.
And let's think about it as you watch it. There's the tear-off. It first falls onto the side pod, okay? And it's just going to lay there for a second until the car gets going. Now, there's a small intake for the turbo. Watch it go into it. Gone. There it is. Gets sucked right into that turbo intake that is just ahead of the right rear suspensions. Now, the question is, did it just get sucked so it's covering the intake down below the carbon fiber, or did it actually go through the turbo, which would be a much more serious problem?
Well, a lot of teams run screens over the top of the turbo inlet. If you look at the Hondas, they actually have a big snorkel with a wire mesh over the front of it. They don't run those on these particular Renards for the Patrick team. And we first heard that it was a throttle linkage problem, and I was sitting here scratching my head saying how that could happen. But obviously, that turbo's sucking in a tremendous amount of air.
33 laps to complete the last lap under a full course caution. Juan Montoya has led all 33 laps and is taking a pretty hard look at the possibility of picking up the single point for leading the most laps. He's already grabbed one for taking the pole. Now, the Adrian Fernandez situation, we've got a little time here. Let's go back and review that once again. He came into the pits, pulled his tearaway off, it flopped onto the side of the car. As he began to accelerate out of the pits and kicked up the turbo, it jumped into the turbo inlet on the right side of the car. Now, as he was going out of the pits, there were a lot of discussions ensuing, and eventually he spun, but Yanni's come back as well.
Yes, and I can tell you that I spoke with a Ford engineer as to what he thinks transpired after it went in the turbo. He thinks that the tear-off went through the turbo, made its way up into the induction system, and jammed its way around one of the throttle mechanisms. So that's why Adrian was reporting that he could not work the throttle properly out on the racetrack itself. So, again, just a very strange scenario. But I will say, a lot of other cars up and down pit road have a screen there, so that could not have happened. This is one of the few cars that I have seen with no screen whatsoever protecting that turbo.
And once again in racing, it's a little piece that probably costs 30 cents that can make a world of difference. Max Pappas, his car owner, Bobby Rahal, this Friday was appointed the interim chief executive officer and president of CART to replace the resigning Andrew Craig. And we asked Bobby Rahal what his vision for the future is and what may be most important to work on.
Of course, Indianapolis, the situation that's in that faces open wheel racing now in the last 5 years or so is maybe job number one. Obviously, we have to get our schedule out, and that's pretty close, I think. Creating or building good relationships with our promoters, all of our constituents, really. But I think with the people we've got, and maybe with the right direction and enthusiasm and motivation, we can get a lot of those things done.
All of the previous CEOs have had business backgrounds without racing backgrounds. Bobby Rahal, of course, is an excellent businessman, but consider his enormous racing background. Is that going to help?
Well, look at his qualifications. A 3-time CART champion, an Indy 500 winner. As you said, a very successful businessman away from the track. He owns a team, so he understands the position of the drivers, the team owners. He has a vision for this series. Certainly, he meets all the qualifications for someone to lead this organization.
I wonder if it means that Dave Letterman will come in and run the team for him. Ready to go green once again as Montoya picks up the pace. Montoya, Castroneves, Franchitti, DeFerrin. Oh, look at Serbia as he battles with Moreno. Whoa.
I tried that a few years ago, and I couldn't make that work. You'll see him pushing very hard on this restart because this is one of the few opportunities they'll have to get the job done.
And Serbia pushing hard again, this time inside of Kurosawa. Pushes Kurosawa off to the edge of the track. He maintains control. Mark Blundell had an off.
And Tracy's moving up as well, trying to make a run on Moreno.
On the restarts, when you're in closest contact, look at this. Tracy has to lock it up as he tries to get inside of Roberto.
Well, Roberto had to go offline. I'm sure his tires are cold. He got some pickup, and so he was very defensive, trying to keep Paul behind him.
Mark Blundell is now totally off the course. And with a dead engine, he's waiting for some help there. Yellow flies only in that area of the course at the moment. We'll wait and see whether or not they go yellow all the way around, but it didn't look to be that precarious a position.
Yep, there you could just see him in the background there. He's off to the side, possibly with no damage if he just got a little wide. If they can get him restarted, they'll be able to get back in the race, but unfortunately a lap down.
Those restarts are so important on a course like this.
And look at Serbia, Paul. He just went out of the picture there, but now Serbia is attacking Pappas.
And then you have this group headed up by Kurosawa. There is Serbia, and he's behind Tarso Marquez and trying to get around Marquez so he can go after Pappas.
And he caught Tarso at exactly the wrong point. Pappas was able to get under Tarso under braking, but there we see Tarso go out a little wide to allow Serbia to slip underneath. Nice bit of driving there.
So CART rookie and Lights champion Oriol Servia from Spain now beginning to work on Max Pappas. Blundell's situation, we'll replay that for you.
Coming back into turn 12, just locks it up. But those tires do a very good job of slowing the car down without necessarily causing any damage. And when he was pulled away, when we looked a little earlier, it was difficult to see. There might have been some damage to the right front.
Yeah, right front looked like it was sitting at an odd angle there. Why does it run just straight off like that?
Well, at the end of all these straightaways, even the short ones, you want to give the drivers the opportunity, if they do get in a little too hot, to have the opportunity to not have to be forced to make the turn and end up against a concrete wall.
Adrian Fernandez involved in one of the most unusual situations we've ever seen. Jan Bikus, can't imagine he's laughing about it.
No, it was a very unique situation. Certainly, have you ever had a tear-off going to turbo before?
No, never. That was very unfortunate. We were running really well, and I think we came out on 8th in that position. Out of the pits, and then I tried to put the power, and I was like, it was something inside the cockpit that it was, avoiding me trying to put full power, and something was wrong. And John, my engineer, was telling me to flip it a few times. So that was what I was doing, and coming into that corner, with cold tires, I was trying to do that, and suddenly it went full. that's pulled me out, but it was still stuck, and it was very unfortunate because the guys had been working really hard, and it's one of those things.
All right, we'll see you in Portland. Thanks.
Thank you.
Adrian Fernandez, one of the winners this year, won at Rio.
We talk about how busy the drivers are out on the track, of course, but coming into the pits, they have a long task of things they have to get accomplished, resetting sway bars, sometimes brake bias. They have to reset the fuel, hit the marks at the right place. And the tear-off is one of the things that the drivers do either usually on the way in. I used to do it just on the way out. One of the reasons is to make sure it blows clear of the car. And you can see in Adrian's list of priorities, he just left it on the side pod, and it just happened to go down the turbo inlet.
Michel Jourdain Jr. in a nice battle with Jimmy Vasser. The fight is for 12. Michel's been working him very hard the last lap. That's Carpentier closing in behind Michel Jourdain Jr.
This morning's warm-up, the track was wet, and we saw some names we haven't seen in a while up in the top 10. Jourdain was one of them for a long period of time, as well as Kurosawa, Nakano, and Norberto Fontana. It tends to level out the playing field a little bit, and all four of those drivers drove exceptionally well in the rain.
Well, Montoya continues to be the leader here on the Raceway at Belle Isle in the Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix of Detroit. He's being chased hard by Helio Castroneves. Dario Franchitti has dropped to third on the pit stop. We'll be back. You're looking down on the Raceway on Belle Isle in Detroit from the Honda Helicam. That's Helio Castroneves. He runs in second place. About a second and a half behind Montoya. He has not let Montoya get away from him. The Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix of Detroit at the 40th lap. And in just 2 laps, Juan Montoya, if he maintains the lead, will pick up the single point given for leading the most laps. He's thus far picked up 7 points this year on those little single point deals. And he's moving up there to a point where those count, and they count greatly as he is in quest for a back-to-back championship.
Montoya on that last lap extended the interval over Castroneves from 1.6 to 2.1 seconds. But I have to say, Castroneves and DeFerrin were blindingly quick testing last week at Mid-Ohio. Their cars are working extremely well. I have to think that both Montoya and we see the car splitting the Penske teammates there of Dario Franchitti are working a little bit harder, using their tires a little bit more. And that the two Penskes, I would imagine in the long run, should be able to take advantage of their chassis setup to get towards the front.
Roger Penske has announced this year that he was going to Reynard. He, in fact, did go to Reynard, but Parker, it's a Penske Reynard. It's beginning to look less and less like a Reynard every race.
Every race we see something different on these cars. We were calling them Renskis or Pinards. We're trying to figure out at what point during the season do they actually become Penske's. But the side pod shapes, the rear deck cowling, and the obvious things you can see with the bodywork are very different now than a standard Renard. We know that they've made some modifications, installing the engine and the transmission at a different angle than the other cars. And we're pretty sure that the suspension geometry has also been altered.
Both Helio Castroneves and Gilles DeFerrin, second and fourth place with those chassis. Franchitti sitting in the center there. Back now with Jimmy Vasser, Michel Jourdain Jr., and Alex Tagliani. Three-way battle for 12th place. Tagliani, there he is out of the Forsyth Players stable, who had some great moments at the start of the year. Actually, twice could have won. But here in what really ought to be his stronger venue of road racing, he's back in the field fighting, currently running 14. This is the tightest battle on the circuit. Vasser, Jourdain, and Tagliani.
And Jourdain having a difficult job here, trying to gain ground on Vasser, but at the same time having to check his mirrors. We can see him looking from side to side, trying to protect himself from the attacks of Tagliani. It's much easier to be the attacker. It's much easier to be in Alex's position than to be in Michel's position.
With the 43rd lap now complete for the leader Montoya, he does pick up that extra point.
And if you're in Jimmy Vassar's position, all you're hoping is that Tag will distract Jourdain long enough so that you can just focus on trying to catch the car in front of you, which is Michael Andretti. You can see the marbles getting thicker there offline.
Tagliani, rookie in the series, lined up behind guys who have a number of years racing between Jourdain Jr. and former champion Jimmy Vasser. So at very least, he's getting a great education here.
They're slowly closing on Michael Andretti now. Now back on board with Juan Montoya. On the back section of the course, coming through turns 12, now 13. Top gear here, 175 miles an hour, flat out kink, slightly off camber, pass, start, finish.
Let's go to Gary Gerald.
See Helio Castroneves in car number 3 for Roger Penske, second place. They keep telling him to keep working on that fuel mileage. They want to get 2.2 miles per gallon. And that's tough to do around this place and still run with the leaders at race pace. Remember now that Montoya and Castroneves both pitted on lap number 27. To make this a two-stop race, you basically have got to do it 28 laps each time. 28, 28, 28 gets you to 84. That's the race distance. So that's a big key right now for this team.
I would think it'd be almost impossible to run fast and go 2.2.
Well, 2.2 miles per gallon gives you nearly 33 laps under green conditions. Remember, Castroneves drove a brilliant race at Long Beach, holding Vassar behind him.
Tagliani finally gets by Michel Jourdain Jr.
while getting great fuel mileage.
They've been working on this for about 12 laps.
Very clean pass. You can see just carried a little bit more momentum going down to turn 3. Got inside. Jourdain maintained his line. And now we can see the Tag was clearly quicker than Jourdain as Jourdain is starting to fall back away from this battle with Vassar. Well, now Andretti, Vassar, and Tagliani.
Yeah, that one's closed up pretty good now. Tagliani beginning to work on Vassar, who is already working pretty hard on Michael. Here comes Michael, Vassar, Tagliani.
They've got slower traffic ahead in the form of Tarso Marquez. So obviously, Tag wants to be just as close to Jimmy as he possibly can be, so that if Michael gets tripped up trying to get past Tarso, Tag can try to take the advantage of his momentum to get by Jimmy and hopefully then go after Michael as well.
Michael's teammate, Christian Fittipaldi, with Max Pappas just behind him. This fight is for 5th.
And as you can see, as they came off of turn 6, Christian gave a quick look over his right shoulder there, looking in the mirror, trying to see where Max is. The rear visibility in these cars is very limited. Basically, you look in the mirror, you see the rear view, or you see the tire, the right rear wing end plate if you're looking to the right, and just a small space underneath the wing to see the car behind you. So you've got to wait until you just come on the straightaway so you can watch the car exit the corner behind you to get an idea of what color it is as it flashes through that small viewport that you've got to see where your competitor is.
Max Pappas, but did you understand it?
I'm glad his engineer could understand it.
Parker, we had that report from the Penske camp about the fuel mileage needs for Castroneves. Now, Roger Penske has told Gilles de Ferran that he's doing fine on his fuel conservation and his mileage. I want to ask you, how much does driving style influence fuel mileage?
Well, it's everything, Gary, because it's how soon you lift off the throttle on the way into the corners, how high you rev the engine on the downshifts. If you ride with someone like Montoya, even though he gets great mileage, he's got the thing nearly on the rev limiter on every single downshift. And then it's how you pick the throttle up, how much discipline you have, short shifting the engine. In other words, not taking it all the way up to the rev limiter. If you do all those things well, you can actually get really good mileage, but then you have to push extraordinarily hard under braking and during cornering to try to keep your pace up.
Then in keeping that in mind, do engineers, when they set their game plan for a race, take all of that into consideration in terms of race strategy?
Well, they certainly do. Some drivers, like we're watching this battle between Franchitti now and de Ferran, Franchitti can do that. He can lift off the throttle a little earlier, carry a little bit more speed off throttle, and not use the brakes. Oh, there goes de Ferran.
De Ferran's got him. DeFerrin been working on that one for a while, too, and finally.
Good job there, good job. P3, nice and smooth.
And that's a very...
Way to go, 10 laps before we pit.
That's a very difficult place to pass him coming into the first corner, and now...
If Christian comes by to pick up the position as well, and look at Franchitti as he came off the corner with Pappas right there. Something's got to be wrong with Franchitti.
I'm thinking maybe once DeFerrin got inside him, he got off in the marbles a little bit. He got some pickup on his tires, and now he's just hanging on, hoping that he can scrub that stuff off before Max attacks him.
Max Pappas is right there and ready to work him. Max Pappas, Kenny Breck, they both drive for Bobby Rahal. Breck is already out of the running. He came out early. Max Pappas is right there doing everything he can now to catch and get around Franchitti. Just has been accomplished by Gil DeFerrin and Christian Fittipaldi. Bobby Rahal, the car's owner, is actually standing out in the no man's land, really with his CEO and president's cap. There was some question by some of the crews, is that a conflict of interest with a guy with the level of honor of Bobby Rahal? It is not. Montoya in front, 3.8 seconds. But quite a bit has happened behind him. Castroneves, DeFerrin, Fittipaldi, they've all come a little bit forward, and DeFerrin and Fittipaldi got around Franchitti. And then while we were away, Max Pappas was able to do the same thing. There is Pappas as he got around, and Servia is now charging down on top of Franchitti.
We're starting to get radio reports from Dario that it just wasn't an offline tire problem, but he thinks that there's something wrong with the car, that a shock has gone bad or he has some other sort of suspension problem.
And look just behind him, Oriol Servia, then Roberto Moreno, and Paul Tracy, who is now 9th, having moved into the top 10. Carpentier is just behind Tracy. Gary Gerald.
Quick conversation with Kim Green, who is on the radio and with the crew backing Dario Franchitti. They said the telemetry shows that all the tire pressures are up. He doesn't know if it was a case where he got off and got into some marbles. He said Dario did not say, but they're playing it pretty close to the vest, and obviously they're concerned. Jan?
Yes, an update for Max Pappas. His situation is no news is good news, and that is that there's no problems with the car. He's getting good fuel economy. He will be pitting, it appears, as the same lap as Gil DeFerrin. When we heard Roger Penske say 10 laps to go, at the same time, that was the message to Max Pappas. So again, a quick pit stop could give him a few more spots.
And we've got, Paul, excuse me for a moment, we've got a report that Dario has alarms going off of some type in the car. He's been told to ignore it. Telemetry here in the pits indicates everything is okay. Now that's got to be unnerving to a driver.
I was about to say that Franchitti is under tremendous pressure from Servia, Moreno, and soon to be under pressure from Paul Tracy and Patrick Carpentier. They're all bottled up behind Franchitti.
And there are engine alarms on the Pi dash or on the steering wheel, depending on the setup, so that if the oil pressure goes too low, water temp goes too high, the dash will flash, tell you what the problem is. If you reset them, it resets that limit another 5 degrees C higher, or... You can hear him say he thinks one of the rear dampers is broken. And so you just keep resetting it. And when you're under attack, you think you've got a suspension problem. It's just one more headache that you really don't need.
Damper being Scottish for shock absorber.
Exactly.
So how long would Dario Franchitti try to keep it out there? He's got everybody in the world lined up trying to get him. It's got to be a danger factor, an increased danger factor, because it's dangerous just to be out there, but increasingly so if he has a problem that's going to heavily affect the handling.
And the problem you've got is that Servia can't stay in this position. He's got tremendous pressure from Moreno, from Tracy, from Carpentier, so he's going to try to do everything he can to get a pass done as quickly as he can, and hopefully place Dario between he and the guys behind him.
Roberto Moreno tries to get inside Servia. Servia doesn't let it happen. It's one of those situations that when the pass is made, you're going to see a lot of different movement because everybody's going to try to take advantage.
And I tell you, that was some real heads-up driving by Servia, because he doesn't want to get offline, but yet he doesn't want Moreno to come through. He held his line, he got to the apex, and he had to have a lot of trust in Roberto that Roberto wasn't going to come in there smoking the brakes and slide down the inside. Moreno's going to try to intimidate him as much as he can. But this young Catalonian, Oriol Servia, he's got an engineering degree, very, very talented, very smart and obviously very disciplined.
Where some of us are still scratching our heads over this Adrian Fernandez tearaway going into the turbocharger intake. Jan Bikus, you've been following that.
Yes, I had the opportunity to go up and down pit road and talk to each of the engine manufacturers and find out about those screens. It turns out that for Ford, Mercedes, and Toyota, they do not require the teams to have screens. Mercedes recommends it, but doesn't require it. Only Honda requires every team to run a screen on their turbo, so they don't have that exact same problem.
Yeah, I suspect a new memo will be out before the end of the day. Here comes Roberto Moreno. He's going to try it again inside Servia. This time he really gets his nose in there. Servia gives him the room. Nice piece of driving. Paul Tracy comes in. Servia maintains the position. Good little battle now. Here comes Tracy. Tracy tries to come to the inside of Moreno. And he does get it done. That's just what I suggested. When one tries, it gives an advantage to one further back.
And I tell you, Paul took a big risk there because the problem is Moreno was very much focused on Servia in front of him. Paul dove down the inside, and oftentimes that'll catch the driver you're attacking off guard because his focus is looking forward. Great driving by Moreno. Good move by Paul Tracy. Earlier that lap, you could see Servia looking left, looking right. He protected the line, gave Moreno room, but then took it right back. Right now, what we're seeing is that Servia is not as quick off the corners as Tracy or Moreno. His cornering speed is okay, but his exit speed is just a little bit slower. And they've got to want to try to set him up coming off the corner, past the pit straightaway to try to get him down the inside of 3.
Looking from up above, that same situation from the Honda Helicam. There's Moreno. He tries his move. Now Tracy is going to line up. That's the first move by Moreno. Tracy knows this is a left-hander. If he can simply get alongside, he does. Grabs the spot away from Moreno.
And you can see Moreno just followed Servia, started to turn in, and you can see him jerk the wheel back out as Paul came underneath him.
And an interesting battle, too, in that Tracy, then Moreno, are first and second in the points coming into this race.
And the other thing to consider is that these guys are going to be in the next couple of laps. You've got to decide whether to take the risk to make the pass on the track or be patient and try to get that pass done in the pits.
1990, Michael Andretti won the race here, leading every lap. He's the only time that a driver has gone wire to wire to win. Montoya going to do it today? Well, the weirdness continues in Detroit, and it's happening to Dario Franchitti. Look at the right front wing. Something is lodged behind the wing and ahead of the suspension. He comes into the pits, Gary Gerald.
Yeah, and the crew, what they suspect is, you'll hear Kim Green, they think it's a brake duct off another car that's lodged in the suspension that it could impact handling, cooling, and all types of things. We'll look and see. Something has clearly been out there in a weird configuration at the right front. Let's see if they try to tidy it up. Yeah, they're just going to try to rip it out of there. They get it out. They hold him. Fueling is complete. There he goes.
Well, now we'll see whether or not that was what was affecting the handling, though I suspect it probably was.
Well, that looked like a front brake duct scoop to me, Paul.
14.6 second stop with the repair, and it's a part of the car that, while we can see it here on the onboard camera on Montoya, driver really can't see down in there.
Pit now.
No, you can't. As you said, that'll affect not only cooling of the engine, but the aerodynamics, chassis balance, everything. I mean, that has just a huge effect on the performance of the automobile.
Out of second place, here comes both Elio Castroneves and Gil de Ferran. Christian Fittipaldi in fourth. Jan?
And Christian Fittipaldi has tape wrapped around the rear wheel. He's picked up the tape that guides him into the pit road. Well, so much for that tape. Gary?
Both Penske cars are in. Castroneves second in line. He'll be the first to exit. He was the first in. He's gone. Now de Ferran is gone, but look out. Oh, right in front of him. Tracy pulls in. Now there's a congestion. Michael Andretti, or one of the Newman Haas cars, along with Max Pappas, 3 wide as they went to the pit exit.
And that put Paul Tracy in a position where they can't refuel him. Now they get him where they can, but they're really stretched out on the hoses to do it. Taking some time to get the vent in, to get the jacks up.
Start motor.
They're calling for the motor at the back of the car. Apparently he's also stalled it. Normally you go over the wall with the motor just in case.
This is the strangest turn of events I remember seeing in such a short period of time.
And as Paul Tracy comes out, look up pit road. That's the leader, Juan Montoya.
How about the car? Any changes of the car? The car is good. He says slow this time. Slow down this time. Slow down, slow down, slow down.
Gary?
Boy, he didn't slow down much, but he did put it on the proper spot. That's so important for getting that fueling coupling engaged.
His car's pitted the lap before. You ready? Go, go, go. Good job.
So Montoya out in 13.6. Patrick has kept Moreno out of the pits. Remember, the Patrick Racing team ran long for the first stop, and that should give Roberto Moreno the lead. Jan Pikas, Michael's in.
Yes, and he's getting his routine service. Remember, they're using a new vent release that helps it not stick, and you can see they were easily able to clear the car as Michael Andretti's fueling was complete.
A routine for Michael, who came in 10th, out in 11th. Here's DeFerrin. Now, what we really want to watch here is Tracy. DeFerrin gets around him out, but Tracy's sitting at a bad angle. And that is concern over a crew member who may be injured. And we'll get you an update on that. We're, of course, not going to speculate on that one. Here it is again, Parker, from the outside.
And you can see he just came across DeFerrin's bow. Yeah, and you can see him fall back here, Paul. Right front tire changer.
Gary Gerald.
Jeff Simon is the fueler on the Team Cool Green team that's being administered to by the kart safety team. He got back over the wall, and he obviously has got an injury here to his left foot or ankle, and they're addressing that at this point. It was, I believe, that very close call there as Tracy came in, and the Penske car of DeFerrin was trying to get out along with Castro Neves, and there was a lot of congestion, close quarters for the crew. We didn't see it happen, but they're working with him now here to try to get him some comfort on this side of the pit wall.
Remember, too, that Cool Team Green had Bill White and Motegi suffer a broken leg, not in the race, but in the practice, and he's just now coming back to work.
There's just so much pressure placed on the pit crews now to try to get these stops done at absolute their limit, because passing has become so difficult on the track that incidents like this occur. And we could see on the way out between Pappas and DeFerrin and one of the Newman Haas cars that everybody launches the moment they're done, irregardless of whether there's track up there or not.
So here's Roberto Moreno. He stays out. He is the leader of the race. We're not sure how many laps beyond the rest that he's capable of going, but he certainly proved he could go 2 on the first stop. Montoya came out in second place ahead of Elio Castro Neves. Christian Fittipaldi was able to grab 4th, and here comes Roberto Moreno. Jan Vigas?
And we will see if they decide to give this car all the fuel. And you can see when you're doing the left front, and in fact, there's a little slight problem with the left front. But wow, that was a fast one for Moreno. Gives you a bird's eye view of what happens when you're out here on pit road.
So you can make some time.
Moreno keeping the speed limit here, now can come up to speed. That gives the lead back to Juan Montoya, followed by Elio Castro Neves. But Paul Tracy, they're going to give a stop-and-go penalty to him. So next time around, one would expect Tracy would come in.
Well, that would relate to that pit safety violation with a crew member going down. And you think about, I think this is, 3 straight races in a row where Paul Tracy has ended up having to have some kind of a penalty that has brought him off the racetrack into the pits. It'll put him way back in the standings.
Yeah, he had a violation at Milwaukee 2 weeks ago that even this weekend he doesn't clearly understand. And there goes Paul Tracy back after serving the penalty. So it's Montoya, Castro Neves. Roberto Moreno was able to slot into 3rd place, and Mark Blundell, they've been reporting that he may have some problems. So Juan Montoya gives up the lead only briefly. And Montoya slows down. Montoya heads for the pits. And Blundell gets in trouble. It looks like it's with Elio Castro Neves and Christian Fittipaldi.
Now, I think that's Gilles DeFerrin, actually, Paul.
That is DeFerrin. And Christian saying, "What's up?" Gary.
Apparently a problem with the rear tire. They are changing all 4 tires. They don't know if the differential may have broken somehow. So 2 conflicting reports. No, the official says no.
Stop.
Ganassi now telling him no.
They're looking at the half shaft there, Gary.
Montoya was saying the car feels really weird. If there's something wrong with the half shaft, that would explain weirdness.
You could see the inner ball joint, the inner rings there that hold the half shaft to the gearbox have come apart.
So, Gary says that weirdness continues. Helio Castroneves took the lead, and he was not involved in that. That turned out to be Gilles de Ferran. We go to full course caution. Gilles de Ferran sitting there. Blundell saying, get me going. I want to get back. Christian Fittipaldi climbed out of the car and looked at de Ferran like, what were you doing? Well, apparently because de Ferran got up under his rear wing and gave him a bump.
Well, you could see coming in there, it looked like exactly that, Paul, and then obviously there was no place for Blundell to go. He was an innocent bystander on the outside just trying to clear traffic there.
So a good many changes, and very quickly they're going to get Gilles de Ferran underway. Now look at this, Parker. This shows you as he came into the corner.
You can see Christian Fittipaldi trying to complete the pass. It looks like he actually comes back across and contacts the right front of Blundell with his left rear. De Ferran also trying to make the move when that contact was made. Okay, now as we watch, coming down into turn 12, watch Christian come down the right side of Blundell's car. He comes across, actually bumps Blundell. That catches de Ferran out, who's also trying to make the pass. And so it looks to me, now watch Christian Fittipaldi, he comes back across, but instead of staying to the inside, he jukes back to the outside, hits Blundell, catches de Ferran. A bit of a chat here, probably in Portuguese that we wouldn't understand or care to at this point.
Or at least eloquent Portuguese. Christian Fittipaldi not happy, though I'm not so sure that ought to be the situation. There goes de Ferran, Gary Gerald.
And Juan Montoya now out of his car, and we can find out what happened, Juan.
Well, it's a shame. A drive shaft broke. We didn't know what exactly was the problem when I came in. It was the drive shaft. I thought it felt like a loose tire, but it was the drive shaft. And those things happen in the race. But, I want to thank Target and Toyota again. They did a fantastic job. My guys did a fantastic job as well. Belle and everyone, in my team just gave me a great car, and I thought we had it in the pocket again.
You thought that you had this race won. It was working that good. You were holding everybody off, obviously.
Yeah, we were saving a lot of fuel, and everything was going really well.
Well, this a weird day. We've said it so many times. Thank you, Juan.
So full course caution for the incident involving Christian Fittipaldi, Mark Blundell, and Gilles de Ferran. Gilles de Ferran, you saw, was able to make his stop and is back into the field, though well down. His teammate Helio Castroneves is now the leader with Max Pappas and Roberto Moreno, Alex Tagliani, Oriol Servia, and Patrick Carpentier, all benefiting from what Gary and I have both said is weirdness here on Belle Isle. They have just disqualified Paul Tracy, who had worked his way from 19th up in the field, but they disqualified him for the injured crew member. Here we go. Green flag is out.
And Max Pappas knows he's got to get off at turn 2, this corner right here. And so does Servia in order to try to attack. Now they've got the buffer there of Kurosawa in between them and Carpentier. Max having a look, but it's not going to happen there.
Whoa, but Carpentier is under attack. As coming up on Carpentier was Franchitti.
And now Michael's having a look.
Now Franchitti, that was his own brake duct that got caught, and they say now that it's out, everything's fine. Michael, Franchitti, Tagliani, they're all right together.
Michael in the middle of the player's sandwich. He was trying to attack Carpentier while Michael had tag all over the back of him.
Kurosawa stays there. Remember, he ran very well in the lead at Long Beach. And he can keep up. Mark Blundell was involved in that incident with Moreno and Fittipaldi, but he did get restarted.
Now Blundell's 3 laps down, but directly behind him is Jimmy Vasser. Jimmy's going to want to try to get by Mark as quickly as he can to try to get back up in this battle.
Carpentier tries to get around Kurosawa now. Michael Andretti is right there too.
And Kurosawa's not letting him through. He's 2 laps down at this point. We could see him get wide, but still, Patrick was unable to get a run on him and make it stick.
Michael again looks to the right.
And now it looks like Patrick's got a good run on Kurosawa.
Patrick has him. Tagliani takes advantage of it. And Tagliani comes inside Michael.
It's never easy to get by an Andretti, and Michael intimidated him as much as he could, but Alex did a great job there, being pushed down to the inside and getting the pass done.
Kurosawa tightens it up on Tagliani. Michael's coming back. Michael's coming back, but he gets bottled up behind Kurosawa. Now Michael's going to look to the right again.
You know, that's some great driving from the rookie Tagliani, trying to get by Kurosawa but keeping Michael from getting by. You got to look forward and look backwards simultaneously.
That battle just ahead of Blundell. You got a good view there. Now Tagliani wants to work on Kurosawa. Kurosawa no factor in this battle.
You're never more frustrated than when you're exactly in this position. I was in this exact position a few years back at Belle Isle. Had lap traffic in front, being attacked from behind. You've got to be careful not to force a bad pass. Vassar finally gets by the lap traffic of Blundell here to come join Andretti and Tagliani.
Helio Castroneves, the leader. Half a second out ahead of Max Pappas. This is where the fight is right now.
Tag's got to get it done here, going down into turn 3, just as Carpenti had done earlier, and he does. He just goes way offline to do it.
And Michael Andretti wisely pulls up. But it may not be all that smart when you consider you got Vassar there to work on you.
I tell you, you've got to be careful. When you see someone go as wide as Tagliani did on that pass, you'll lose the peripheral vision of the driver you're trying to overtake. They may not see you and come back across. Vassar now getting it done.
And Vassar just forces his way inside of Kurosawa. Now Mark Blundell starts to work on him. And up comes the Farron.
What you want to do if possible, Paul, is just get side by side, wheel to wheel, push them out of your way if necessary so they don't come back across on you. I assume by now that Takura's got a lot of pickup on his tires. It's going to be difficult for him to maintain the line, and now you can see DeFerrin trying to work on him, and it looks like he got by.
Bill DeFerrin had fallen a lap behind as a result of his situation with Christian Fittipaldi and Mark Blundell. At the front, Helio Castroneves, Max Pappas, Oriol Servia, and Dario Franchitti has fallen back, had his problems, but working his way back into the fight. 71 laps of 84 complete at the Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix of Detroit. Gary Gerald, Paul Tracy has suffered a devastating blow to his championship hopes.
Paul, how hard is this for you to digest?
It's really tough to take, especially because we were running such a great race for the Team Cool Green car. I mean, we were, third. We would have been probably third or fourth in the end result, but we were coming in the pits, and Gilles, it looked to me like Gilles' car was going to pull out in front of me, and I tried to avoid him getting into the pits, and then couldn't stop for the box and ran into my crew guy, and that's what excluded us from the event.
How much, in your mind, does this now hurt your championship hopes, realizing that this is, the 7th of 20 rounds?
Well, I mean, I don't know. We still got a long way to go. We've shown we're competitive. We're just got a black cloud sitting over top of our heads right now the last 3 races, and hopefully we can shake it next week.
We should update that Jeff Simon, the injured crewman, does have a broken toe. That's the report we have, Paul.
Well, Paul Tracy has many times spoken out against some of the way that the pit controls are exercised, and even against the pit speed limit. His point has been that with the low pit speed limits, the crew will wave you out almost without looking because they don't perceive the cars as moving fast. And there you heard Paul Tracy's explanation of what got him in trouble as Gilles DeFerrin was coming out and he was coming in. Helio Castroneves leads it. Max Pappas is right there, 74 laps complete. Helio has never won 3 second place. Last time that he led a race was at Portland a year ago.
Of course, he had that great run at Long Beach, also in the streets. Very emotional finish. And as we watch this group, as you and I were out on the backside in the Fountain Complex the other day, we're standing there with Mimo Ghibli, the new Super Sub. These cars, Castroneves, also Max Pappas, and also Oriol Servia was one, were working so much better than anybody else's cars. Max turned the quickest time on Friday, had the provisional pole. He was absolutely as smooth as silk, never started the car move. Great bit of driving, the chassis working very, very well. And Oriol Servia having one of his best weekends to date, looking for Cal Wells and the PPI team's first podium finish.
6 races have been completed thus far this year. 6 races, 6 different winners. There they are. Max Pappas in second, but Helio Castroneves, he's never won. Are we looking at 7 different winners? Castroneves, Pappas, Servia, the top 3 on Vicus.
Yes, and Parker, you were talking about how steady some of these cars are, Helio Castroneves and Max Pappas in particular. Now, it's interesting to me that they go well across the bumps, and these 2 cars share the same basic shock absorber. And that is that they run Penske shocks for Helio Castroneves in a version of the Penske shock done in-house by the Rahal team. Tom Janaszek is in charge of that, and it's a different philosophy than many of the other shocks used up and down pit road. And it's funny that they work very well here at Detroit and also Cleveland. When you get the shocks dialed in, the thing can look, in fact, like it's on rails.
How's it a different philosophy, Ed?
Well, the O'Leans dampers or shocks they use on almost everyone up and down pit road have twin tubes. And the Penske shock is a single tube, and they're not exactly sure what gives it the advantage. It's just a slightly different philosophy of moving that hydraulic oil.
And as Jan said, historically, the Rahal team has been incredibly strong at Cleveland. Their car is just magic over the bumps there, and as this circuit at Belle Isle has gotten bumpier and bumpier, this circuit has also placed them at the top of the list.
Michael Andretti still trying to work on Alex Tagliani. Michael is 7th. Don't forget Michael's son Marco been go-kart racing today, and Mario Andretti's ambition to win at Le Mans, his 8th attempt, was thwarted last night when his Panos developed overnight mechanical problems. I don't think Mario's going to give it up with that one.
Now, we talked about the bumps here, Paul, as we watch Michael Andretti. One of the concerns, we saw the inner constant velocity joint, the CV joint break on Montoya's car. With just a few laps to go, I'm still concerned about gearbox reliability, suspensions, and engines.
We want to wish Tony Kanaan a speedy recovery. He's over at Detroit Receiving Hospital. Broken arm. Fortunately, it turned out not to be a collapsed lung, but a slight concussion. They operated on him last night. They said he should be fine for 4 to 6 weeks. We'll see what happens. We'll be back. Helio Castroneves looks for his first win. He looks also to help start Roger Penske on his second 100. It would be the 101st win for Penske Racing if he can hold on to it these final 4 laps. And he's been steadily pulling away from Max Pappas. You saw a puff of blue smoke at the back of Max's car as he came off the last corner. Pappas has fallen to 3.2 seconds behind Helio Castroneves.
And Castroneves picked up another 0.6 of a second on that lap. He is pushing extremely hard. I think maybe the smoke we saw was just the car bottoming as it comes over the rise. It compresses very, very hard off of turn 2, and I think that was just the skid plate on the bottom.
So there is Pappas. A little flash of flame on the upshift.
And as Castroneves pulls away from Max Pappas has increased his lead about 1.4 seconds now over Oriol Servia. He's 9.7 seconds in total ahead of 3rd place. So no pressure from behind at this point. The only thing he can do is continue to try to push. Hopefully, Castroneves will have a mechanical problem or make a mistake. Very, very unlikely with the preparation of the Penske crew and the superior driving ability of Castroneves.
Michael Andretti has pulled off the course. In the engine battle, it's Honda, Ford, Toyota, and then another Honda and 2 Fords. This is Oriol Servia out of PPI, Cal Wells' team. Cal was looking for a little ray of sunshine. This may be it. His rookie, Oriol Servia, doing a very nice job here today. And speaking of sunshine, it does shine all around the track. The clouds that may have brought us rain seem to have fallen off to the south side of Belle Isle. They're still out there, but they're not threatening here. Castroneves is going to have to deal with some traffic. Shinji Nakano just ahead of him. I'm sure that Penske team is doing everything to warn those cars that he'll be closing on. Shinji makes a nice move to let Elio through. Fontana with trouble.
And I'm just hoping he can chug this car up the left side and get off the escape road going into turn 7, because if he stops right there, I'm hoping Kirk Russell will say, hey, we've only got 3 laps to go, leave it, and leave this track green towards the end.
Because Michael Andretti pulled off and out of the race, he's now falling through the field. He had worked his way up to 8.
2 more laps, Elio, 2 more.
What a great victory this would be for this young man. So personable, a great driver. And significantly, Paul, this would be 13th win in a row on street circuits for Honda, dating back to Mauricio Gugelmin's win at Mercedes in Vancouver in 1997.
Roger Penske watching on. Tim Cindric, the team manager, talks with Elio Castroneves. He celebrates so much when he just does well. What is he going to do if he is able to score his first victory?
He's come very close on a number of opportunities. He had that great battle with Michael Andretti a few years back at St. Louis. He had to restrain himself earlier in the year at Long Beach to keep from attacking Paul Tracy. So he knows that he's been so close. This could be his day.
He's overcome quite a bit emotionally this weekend. He's very close friends with Tony Kanaan and was visibly shaken when he heard of Kanaan's injury just minutes before he had to go out and qualify. White flag. Elio Castroneves may in fact be on his way. But remember, this has been a race punctuated with unusual occurrences.
Be smart, no pressure. Be smooth and smart.
He's got the interval up now to 4.7 seconds. What a great podium this is. Castroneves, Max Pappas, what a popular second place that would be. Another fantastic driver. Great personality out of the car. And Oriol Servia, his first podium in his rookie season. Very popular podium, I think, with everyone.
Guys, you heard Tim Cindric saying no pressure to Castroneves. Castroneves hasn't said anything on the radio the last 10 laps. I think he's going to break the silence very shortly.
Well, he's on his way to becoming the 43rd driver in the 22-year history of kart to find his way into victory lane if he can only get this one final lap complete.
And there is no place to rest. You may have almost a 5-second lead, but you can't make the smallest mistake here. You've got to keep pushing. It's when you start to back off, you lose concentration, and then something terrible could happen. So Castroneves now only 2 corners away from his first victory.
I'd be hard put to identify a more fun-loving, outgoing, and friendly personality.
How to say your name now? I know who Elio Castroneves is.
Elio Castroneves.
Great job, buddy. Great job.
Has taken the Tenneco Automotive Grand Prix of Detroit. His first victory.
That one.